of
Hang on,
posting. I beg your pardon?
we're live. We're going live.
I can
I'm
still
sorry.
talk though, can I?
Oh yeah. Just letting you know that. Hello, everybody, and
Hey,
welcome to Monday Night Domains. Can everyone hear me? I believe for the first time in about a month and a half, we get to experience the full Julie experience unbuffered. For those of y'all that have been following us pretty regularly, I have broken something that means it doesn't want me to move on camera. So we just switched to my phone because I didn't think of that a month ago, but we thought of it now, so better late than never. Dad, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It feels like a quiet time of the year, late summer. Everyone's in the Hamptons, I guess, on vacation.
That's where it looks like
Uh,
you are for your backdrop.
I'm gearing up, figuring people will be hopefully ready to go after Labor Day and buy some domain names from me.
I like that. I'm ready. I've been doing some background work, just kind of getting everything ready to go. I feel like I've been gliding, and now I need to get ahead. So, but that's not always easy. So we're trying to make some changes for y'all on Monday Night Domains. We're not necessarily ready to announce anything, but hopefully we've got some really good stuff coming. So I would keep updated. Just we have some things that might make it easier for people to join, easier for us to show, easier for the word to get out, easier for us to post clips. Just life is gonna be better in the future, hopefully. So
Yeah, and I think that our goal is to take Monday Night Domains and really, hopefully, make it something that you'll remember and you'll work into your schedule and you'll want to come back on Monday nights. I think when I first started doing Monday Night Domains on Clubhouse during the pandemic, which is almost like an out of body experience, that we went through a time where we were not allowed to go outside of our house. We were
right.
not allowed to go to businesses. We were not allowed, and wondered if by touching a airplane door or a handle, we could potentially jeopardize our life, but in the middle of that, the domain community was able to regather on Clubhouse. And when Clubhouse started, it was a terrific app. At the same point, I had just started a 24/7 Zoom chat. where basically
I love
domains
that.
could come in whenever they wanted. And if people were there talking socially, that'd be great. But then we also had kind of appointment stuff. It was like, okay, Friday afternoon, we're going to talk Web3 at 2:00. Tuesday afternoon, we're going to talk outbounding. So we can all talk about, hey, how are we going to sell these domains? We got to do it. And we got to do it together. You know what I mean? You got to know that someone's trying the same time you are, right, Julie? That gives you the
really does.
The little boost.
It gives you some structure to your day where you're like, okay, I can have all these questions and I can have all these thoughts, but on Mondays I can get myself together and have a schedule for, well, I'm going to get new information now. I'm going to be able to talk to other people now. We're going to be social now. And so I think any sort of schedule like that in, working as an entrepreneur, you're really self-motivated. And sometimes you're like, oh, I can push this off. But you're like, no, I need to have this information to be ready on Monday. Or I need to be ready to utilize whatever they tell us on Monday. Like, that could be a huge thing. And so are you thinking about talking about tonight some of the stuff we're looking for in the future? Obviously, we're going to re-talk about this later on a much more. This is one of our first streams back from our planning period. So we're not wanting to hard launch anything. But do you want to give people a little sneak peek and I can...
Well, I think the best way to do it is just to do it. Look at that. But I think that in general, we will talk about all kinds of domains. We'll try to sometimes have a guest. We'll try to, and we'll announce. I think this isn't the official relaunch of Monday Night Domains, Julie.
Right? So, no.
Okay. So, but I think that some of the things we would do is we would talk about the news of the week. We would probably have a guest who had a product or service that I always use the words new, better, and different. And that's what I thought people would want to hear. You know what I mean? Something new, something better, or something different. And then the third thing we do is have the appraisals like we do here. People can submit their name for appraisal. And then some Q&As where you may be asking a question because you want to know it, but there's a good chance that other people may want to know it. So I could do some domain basics. And then, Julie, we'll probably have you talk about, domaining for the younger generation. But speaking of that, you've got some competition for younger domain people trying to connect with the next generation. Did you get the clip I sent you?
I did. And I have really enjoyed my Monopoly over here. So I've got to step my game up because she really had her ducks in a row. I was able to listen to that podcast for only about 5 minutes because then life got very crazy at my day job. But she seemed just very put together and demure, and I've got competition. But I also have a friend. I think one of the things we talk about a lot with Web3 and in domain space is we're trying to better the industry as a whole. Is we can't see other people who are doing the same thing as us as competition. They've got to be our friend, a mentor, a colleague. How can we work together to do this together? And I think, especially as women, that might be huge. However, she's 15, right?
Yeah. So this is Christine Riedel, and she's the daughter of the CEO of Team Internet Company, which is one of the largest internet companies, Michael Riedel, in the world. They power over 100 top-level domains. They used to be called CentralNIC, and now they go by Team Internet. So they probably have over tens of millions of websites that they operate, and then they power the domain name business. And I've been a customer of their various properties for a long time. And what was really interesting about it, Julie, is when so just to step everybody back, we're talking about domain names, which were the domain name on the internet that ties in a word like MondayNightDomains.com, and we connect that to where the content is for that domain name. So all you have to do is type in MondayNightDomains.com. You don't have to type in the numerical address of the connector of the thing. And then about 20 years after the internet started, they gave out a whole new bunch of names. And we still call those new TLDs because they weren't around at the beginning, like ComNet and org. and you see them all the time now, like .store and .tech and .site and .horse and .hockey, .cfd, which we
Rodeo.
work with. What's that?
Was .rodeo one?
.rodeo. So they run the gamut from the largest being .xyz is probably, well, that's not the largest, probably the largest in terms of resales. .tech is also huge. And so what she was sharing was how she did a survey of younger generation people, XYZ and Alpha A generation, and what she found was, and we'll have the link to it this week if I can find it. She did a presentation at Domain Summit, which is Helmut's conference, as the second year in London.
Yeah.
And she talked about the perceptions of them. And the last one she had, which was really interesting, is there was a real trust gap, and the trust gap was bigger among women.
I believe it because we're used to getting duped, so we have our eye out.
And it was really interesting. And what's interesting for me is that the companies that launched these new top level domains wanted to tell everybody, oh, in the next generation, this is all they'll be using. But it was kind of self-serving. You know what I mean? Of course, they wanted it to be that way, because then they would try to convince people that having a website was just as, or a store, shop was just as good as .com. And what you'll hear from Julie and I is that it's not as good.
No.
But it could be better. It could be better for your situation. But if you just want to go to the store and pick out a domain name, it is like comparing, a high-end car, to a lower-end car. But if your purpose,
sometimes a Honda Civic is a really good car.
There you go. So, but what she talked about was that generation would, she could see it happening, but they would have to do it. You know what I mean? So it was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then we have. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, I think it goes back to kind of what me and you talked about at the very beginning of all this, is that you can't be fake about it, because the new generation can spot fake a mile away. You cannot be fake about it. You've got to be genuine. And that is where the marketing departments come in for the new TLDs, I think, because the more people hear them, the more we're going to understand that they are authentic and they are real. Because we were taught pretty much all of our grown-up internet lives was that .com is real, but not always trustworthy. .gov and .edu is trustworthy. Like, we weren't taught about any of the new TLDs in our proper educations. So we're like, oh, we're used to these bots and being redirected 4 times from any sort of other TLD. So if we can see more people, because I've seen more people using like .shop. Now we've kind of accepted .io. But if you see more people using these actual websites, I think that will be the thing that changes the perception of the new TLDs.
Yeah, and they can be strong. Now, .io, which you mentioned, and .ai, they're kind of some of the strongest ones. What those are, to take everything back to the base, those are country code TLDs, right, that were originally given to countries, but then they've been kind of repurposed. Just like I do some work in Los Angeles with .la, even though it's the country code for Laos, they really don't even use the English language is not their main language. So Laos, even, they say it and spell it differently in their own language. So they can profit from selling the names for .la, and then a percentage of the money goes back to strengthen and build their internet infrastructure and their internet community. So I think
that's a cool concept. Do you think that could be used for charity work at some point?
It's hard because.
And what's the tax write-off situation with that? With country?
Everyone, I wouldn't say there's a lot of charitable people in the domains. There's a lot of charitable individuals in the domain space. NamesCon, our biggest conference, was actually started as a way to raise money for the Water School, a charity in Africa that provided safe drinking water. But I've not seen a business do it. But the reason I wanted to just talk about AI is even just this week, there was 5 .ai sales from $10,000 to $40,000 nationwide. .ai. Yeah, sold for $10,000. Rogo.ai, ROGO, sold for $20,000. And that's what we call a CV domain, which is consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. And when the Web 2 generation See, Web 2 came about. There was Web 0, Web 1, and then Web 2 thought they were new because they were young in like 2012. You know what I mean? So they
Right.
came out with Web 2, and they couldn't get any of the good names, so they started going for these short ones. And then, like you say, Julie, we always talk about this: the social proof, the social trust was in this idea of a CVCV. Hulu would be the perfect example.
They also make really good brandable names. I think. Didn't Adam rebrand because of that?
ATOM. That was kind of a different story. Adam is kind of the super. It's a super brandable, meaning it is brandable because it's a real word.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the top of the food chain in domain names, where you brand your company a real word, and you're flexing that you are the person that owned, the one and only person that can own that word. Right. And it's your brand name and your company name. So I think this is different. This is when you start talking about substitutes and you say, well, we can't get like Hulu might have wanted to get streaming.com. You know what I mean? And they're like, well, we can't get streaming.com. So we're going to, like you say, we're going to brand it something, and we're going to have to spend a lot of money to convince people what is Hulu.
That's a good point. I mean, Netflix, I don't know how that began, how they got their name, but that doesn't mean, Flex is a TV term, but like that doesn't mean.
Right. But if you're using other people's money, meaning you're in a company, you're the marketing director, it's the company's got $100 million in the bank, and then you do go for a brandable that doesn't mean anything to anyone else in the world. And then you're going to spend the money to have them know that that's your brand. And then once you do, everyone knows that you're Netflix. So that is the playbook that's taught in marketing circles. Now, a lot of bootstrap entrepreneurs are like, I don't have all this money. I didn't raise $50 million from venture capital. You know what I mean? And so they may be looking to say, how can I disrupt? So they may buy a $500,000 name or $1.5 million name, like Friend.com was bought recently. And it's going to be an AI tool. It's like your personal friend. Friend.com is your AI that you train based upon your life. But back to the .ais that sold. So Penny.ai, which is actually a name in our family that we know, 35,000 for Penny.ai. Relax.ai, 42,000. Now, all the one-word English names in AI are taken, so it's very hard to go buy Penny.ai for $150 because you have to pay for 2 years and then turn around and sell it. But if you happen to have done that, it works out great. But you have to realize that there's probably 30,000 domains just as good as Penny.ai. Well, say 15,000, and so you don't know which one of those someone's going to wake up today and go, that's the one I want. Except for when they say that's the one I want, and they start thinking about it, and they start imagining their company, and they start imagining everything they want their company to be, and they tie everything they want their company to be around this domain name. That's when you can get the most value, because they're able to put everything they feel and want to have accomplished into this name. You know what I mean? And you capture it. It's really similar to in real estate. You wonder why land sells for so much when you can't live on land. You can't sleep on land. You sleep in a building. But if you have a piece of land and it's on the beach and someone's going to build a beach house on it, then the experience of being in the beach house is going to be worth $5 million. It only cost $1 million to actually put the lumber together to build the house. So you get to sell your land for $4 million because you're like, well, once the house is built, the whole thing's worth $5 million, and it's only going to cost you $1 million to build it. So you see,
only $1 million. That's nothing.
I just mean that you're able to extract the value. So
no, I completely understand. Yeah, I get that.
That's kind of news of the week is the AI sales. The AI sales keep going and keep going strong, but you either have to own 40 or 50, which means you're paying renewals of $7,000 or $8,000 a year, You have to have real conviction. But it was interesting that these all sold on Namecheap. So I have about 20 AI domains, and I am going to go list my domains on the Namecheap marketplace now, thinking that they've got, even though I could list them on Namecheap if I list them on something called Afternic, which is like the MLS, but it's getting more expensive. I'm probably going to go list them on Namecheap Direct. And that's kind of what you do in domaining is you try to see what's going on, and you don't know exactly what's going to work. You just have to try stuff, kind of like a shopkeeper. Well, I'll try to put some stuff in the window, and then I'll try to put some stuff on the counter, and then I'll try to put, you know, you merchandise, Julie. I guess that would be the thing.
No,
And when you found that I was into domain names, you have, from what you've seen, there's not a lot of merchandising, right?
No. That was what my question was going to be. So when you have one of those names, it's just as good as 15,000 other names, but it's still a very good name. How do you set that name apart? And how do you plant that idea of someone's heart and soul and dreams and company into this name?
Well, there's two thoughts. One is you find people that are close to it and you suggest it to them. But I think the best way is you just have to wait. And what that means is you have to have allocated capital, money. And you've had to tell yourself, I will own this name for 3 to 4 years, what it costs now plus what it costs to renew. And I will be there when the suitor comes knocking at the door. Right. And the worst thing is you paid $2,000 or $3,000 for the name at auction. You did it on a credit card. You spent too much money. 2 months from now, you've got to try to sell it. You go to sell it, you only get $600 back. You know what I mean? And then a year later, it sells. So really, the best thing you can do to be a good domain investor, in my opinion, is only allocate money that you can afford to keep in there. In crypto, they call this diamond hands. You're like, hey, I'm going to own this name when the right person comes along. I'll still own this name. And I think that, yes, you can suggest it. You can list it on these different marketplaces. But the key is if you have conviction about what you bought, don't lie to yourself, but have conviction and have it be rare and valuable. And then just make sure you've got your money management to a point where you can wait. You can afford to wait.
Right. That makes sense. So what is your thoughts on, obviously you want the landing page, but what are your thoughts on kind of upping the SEO of that name? Maybe putting it in some blog posts and putting backlinks to the landing pages, anything to kind of get it more. How do you get it more visible? Because if I don't know that I need a name that bad, how do I know that I need the name?
Our industry is terrible because now with AI, at least I can put a description on the landing page that says one of my names is poinsettia.ai. It's a flower, Christmas flower. You get your poinsettias. Poinsettia. Am I saying that right? Poinsettia? Poinsettia or poinsettia. Now, that's one of the reasons I was probably able to buy it is it's hard to say and it's even maybe harder to spell. But at least, to the extent that it's a single word and it's a flower and it's something a lot of people know, that I have that name. So I've just got to do it now. Right now, I just have it on a landing page that says inquire about the name because I'm restricted on what I can do on certain companies that are monopolies in our space landing pages. But if I go with Dynadot or Pork Bun, I can get an AI description that says, if you're looking for a great domain for an artificial intelligence startup, consider poinsettia.ai. And at least then, if someone Googles great domain name for AI startup, at least I have a chance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the second thing that it's been 20 years since I figured we'd be doing this, I figured we'd all have videos on the name, that we'd have videos with the flower, the Christmas time, the flower opening, the different varieties, everything that the name conjures up. And you need to show that visually with music, right? And you need to paint that picture of what that brand could be. And that we just assume, well, if someone comes, they're going to know that already. But maybe it takes out. Now, the reason most people don't do it is they say, well, if I do that today, will I sell the name tomorrow?
No.
And the answer is no. You don't know if you will or not. You have to effort. You have to effort not knowing if it's going to get a reward. But the only benefit you get is if it does work, you might say, you know what, I'm going to do that on all my names. And not a lot of people are doing it. And so you can have these little tricks that work, but it's not immediate. So anyway, those are some of the ways you can do it. But yes, forcing a domain name to sell is very difficult. Now, if you know it's got a market, like if it's what we call a geo-service name, like newenglandplumbing.com, and you can call New England companies that do plumbing in New England, that's one way to do it. But because you called them, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I saw that last time I bought a domain name at GoDaddy, it was $10. So I'll give you 20. So you have that thing. So the best way to do it is to manage your money in a way that you can wait.
I like that. That's a really good. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that. It's like, make sure, like whenever you invest, it's like when you buy a car. Whenever you buy a car, you need to also make sure you can invest the money to maintain it, or else you waste it.
No, that's a great point. Especially because when you buy a car, everyone knows, well, it loses value as soon as you drive it off the lot. Well, the same is true with a domain name. If a domain name comes up for auction, that's the way most domain investors buy their domain names, and I put a bid on it, then everyone else is going to see my bid for 100, and they're going to bid 120, and then I'm going to bid 140, and they're going to bid 160. And then I'm going to bid 200, and they're going to be like, well, someone else wants it for 200, so I'll bid 225 because it's always worth 200. Someone else thought it was worth 200. So, but you're always going to have to pay more than the next person to actually get it. So I do think most domains, you can tell yourself it isn't true, but most of the time when you buy them, you've paid more than any other domainer to get them. So there is a little bit of money you have invested that you probably can't turn around the next day and sell it for that. Now, we don't like to say, oh, no, this is a smoking hot deal. I used to say, Julie, domaining is the only business where you can go home with less money than you started with and feel like you're worth more. Because you're like, oh, man, I bought a domain name today. It's worth 10 grand. So I spent $250, but, I'm worth 10 grand.
Hey, you know what? That's how property sales go. So
there you go. Well, more than SEO.
I'm going to refill my water while you answer, if that's okay.
Because we'll send you screenshots of LinkedIn. So what he's doing is combining LinkedIn, which is a way to show if you have a domain name for sale, why not just put your LinkedIn page on there? And then you can put who you are, because what you're doing there is you're adding attributes to the domain name. Right now, a domain name is just MondayNightDomains.com. It's a word. That's all it is. But now if you combine a reminder of what it means, an illustration of what it means, some numbers of how popular it is, some numbers of how popular those words are, a connection with who you are, that you are a hopefully intelligent, representative business person who bought it. Therefore, when you come knocking at my door for this name, please be aware that the buyer wants me to be a desperate student who needs $20 this weekend to get pizza. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I had to tell a buyer one time, they're like, well, I just thought that you needed to sell it and you paid $10 for it, so I could give you 20. You know what I mean? And I had to say, well, I had a lot bigger expectations of my buyer too. I didn't think you'd be knocking on the door with only $20 in your pocket. I had, and so it's both sides want the other side to be vulnerable, desperate, and they picture that in domains a lot. And so a lot of your negotiating is just to get that out of the way. And I believe, and I'll finish with this today because we're going to have a short show, that for domain negotiations, in my opinion, the real negotiating always starts when one side walks away. Because Julie, say you were trying to buy one of my domains. What did I sell this week? The cryptonewsletter.com.
Ooh,
the cryptonewsletter.com for $1,500.
still
And
solid.
everyone's like, oh, well, if it didn't have the, I'd buy it. Well, no kidding. So would 20,000 other people in the world. You know
For
what I mean?
$150,000 more dollars.
Right. And then if I wanted to go get cryptonewsletter.com, I would probably have had to pay a lot more than I paid for the crypto newsletter. But the way I've made money is by keeping my acquisition costs down and still realizing that the works. It sounds great with an email address. I'm Paige at thecryptonewsletter.com.
It's still a word and a sentence.
And it's like the crypto newsletter. And then Google also throws out the. So if you search for crypto newsletter, they're gonna bring up the crypto newsletter in some ways without the. But what I meant by that is, if I would have been negotiating for that, they would have said, "What's your asking price?" I would have said $3,500. They would have said $100, right?
Yeah.
And then I would have said like $29.99. They'd be like, "Great, this guy just knocked off $500 for me just saying $100." Well, I'm going to say 125, you know, and as a seller, you want to say, well, I can't believe that person did that. But you have to say they're going to do what's best for them. You know what I mean? And they're thinking, maybe I can get this for 150. And until you tell them that they can't, and they really believe it, you're not going to find out what they really want to pay for the name. So you may have to just. Yeah, you may just have to decline their offer. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to decline. I want to tell them that I still maybe want to sell it, but could they come up a little more? But I think you have to just say no out, because they can always come back, right? They can always contact you again and say, hey, we really like this name. We think we want to go 1,500, but that's all we have budgeted for the project. That's the most we can stretch to. So now now I feel like I've got them to be real about what they want to do. But until then, same with me. I can put 3,500 and they can offer 100, and then they can offer 200, and I could offer. What I would do then is I would just go down 100. Well, you went up 100, I'll go down 100 to 3,400, and then they're going to walk away, and I'm going to have to be like, fine.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Now, there's a chance if you're doing your inquiries. There's a lot of different ways to do your inquiries. Sometimes you have their email address, sometimes you don't. But if you did, you could always go back. Like what I'm going to do after Labor Day is I'm probably going to look at all the inquiries that I've had this year where I can contact the inquirer and say, hey, I'm sorry. I realized we didn't work out a deal earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Do you still have an interest in this domain name? And the reason is most people aren't making these multiple $1,000 decisions on whims. Sometimes they are. Oh, I like that name. Here's $2,000. You know what I mean? But sometimes timing is really important. Was their business doing well at the time? Not well? Did they have their site built? Did they have it not built? So anyway, that's what I'll do the rest of the year. Is I'll start. I call it shaking the bushes. Shaking the bushes. Go ahead.
That might be a great thing with all the new reseller pages that you can do, is start generating an email list whenever people come to you. Because I know whenever you have a website, if you're selling a product on a website and people have it on their cart and don't cash out, or something like that, you then can set up an automation to push a discount to them or to reconnect with them and get them back as a customer. So I think now that you can start, they're putting kind of more hands in, or more power in the hands of the domainers. I think that might be something that really comes well out of this, is that, I see, you can put people into a group you visited my site, you had this item in your cart and you didn't purchase it, or you made an offer and we didn't come to agreement. Boom, you're on a list, so that after Labor Day, if I cut my prices 20%, you'll get a notification about that.
Yeah, and one of our big marketplaces, they have that, but they haven't improved it in 20 years. Atom does that. Atom, ATOM, which we talked about. They actually have a thing where you can click, and they'll randomize the discounts around your names between $100 and $300. They'll just randomize them just to have people feel like, hey, you got here on a week when it's $300 less, Yeah. And so I think there's a little bit of merchandising, but we have a long way to go. But anyway, Julie, thanks. Welcome back after our summer break. More Than SEO. Thanks a lot. I'm going to take up your questions next week. Julie, if you want to copy them down, I'll copy and paste them, and we
I'm
will
about to
start with
email you,
those. I'm going to screenshot them, and we will start with those next week. But we'll also have a Freename update next week. Freename is a platform that allows you to get domain names that aren't part of the existing internet. They're part of the Web3 and the blockchain space. And they've had some major announcements. They're now an official ICANN registrar. You can mint on Solana. They've joined some industry associations, and we'll try to have a little short interview with Davide, their CEO, probably in mid-September, to just bring you up to date on some of the new things they're doing. But Julie, I hope you have a great week.
I hope everyone has a great week and a great Labor Day, and I will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.